So we're on law number 5, the law of addition. I know in some of your books it has the law of E.F. Hutton, but this was upgraded. And it's all about leaders serve others. They add value. And again, our overall class is about lifting the lid. God, how can I have more influence, whether it's my kids, whether it's my neighborhood? And for us, it's also very much, how can we have influence in the people who don't know Jesus? If we just want to tell them a message, but we're not able to connect with them, we're probably not going to have much influence. And again, this basic law is that if you want to have great influence, it's not by acting like a boss, which is a lot easier for some of us to do. But it's truly what Jesus taught us. If you want to be great, learn to be a servant. When he washed feet, what an incredible thought, because it was going to be his last memories with his disciples. So this was something of his last leadership influence moment. And he could have chosen anything, but he said, no, this is the most important thing I can teach you as you take the baton of leadership from me. And he got on his knees and started washing. Again, just Sue may have mentioned some of these, but favorite quotes: you can have anything you want in life if you're willing to help enough other people get what they want. Measure success by the seed you sow, not the harvest that you get. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself serving others. And I think Paul talked about it as a mindset in Philippians 2. You can read it on your own, but he says, he goes through it and he's kind of trying to correct some division. Isn't it good to know that they had conflicts in the early church? And he's going to talk about Euodias and Syntyche. And I call them, you're odious and you're too sensitive. But anyhow, they couldn't get along. And, they were trying to figure out that. And Paul says, don't start with the argument. Don't start with the issue. Start with the attitude. Start with a mindset. Let this mind that was in Jesus Christ be in you. And then he begins to explain, want for others more than you want for yourself. Really desire that they're understood more than your desire to be understood. And he begins to say that's what the way Jesus thought, and why, though he were God, he laid aside everything and became a servant and ultimately died on a cross. And he's indicating for Jesus that wasn't just an act, it was a daily habit. Taking up the cross is every day saying, how do I like to say, turn off WIIFM, what's in it for me, and turn, what can I do for you? And some of the things about this mindset, we say it's choosing significance over success. It's deciding that whether you're a business person or a pastor or whatever you are, that you're going to define success different than other people. It's going to be based on how far you helped others get, not how high you climbed yourself. And I just love that idea. Be a ladder builder, not a ladder climber. Because you go out in the world and you've got everybody climbing all over people, to be noticed, to be successful. And there's a few people who just say, wait a second, I'm going to go ahead and help you get your ladder built. And I in my book, Plenty Too Much, I talk about this guy I got to go on a plane side from Senegal. He was literally in the cabinet of the president of Senegal. And he just said, you know why we can't get out of poverty? He says, in Senegal, we are so convinced the only way you can go higher is to pull someone down. The whole crab thing. And he said, what I've seen, and he had an exaggerated belief about America, but it was his idea. In America, you believe if you push someone higher, you get to go higher. And he said that's what he thought was the biggest difference. I wish it was really true. But I just love, and I love all of you to talk about a hero that you made rather than a hero you became. Is there someone in your youth group or someone in your Bible study that you were really able to so cheer and somehow they got to another level? And how did that make you feel? I bet you it made you feel really good. There's very little room at the top for ego, but there's all kinds of room at the top if you're trying to help other people get there. There's so many ways people can get better, go higher, be honored, be acknowledged, be celebrated. And as I said, my passion on this, and I've got Gary Brown, so proud of him because he has incredible influence in the prison there in Virginia. He has large numbers of people he goes and ministers to every week, and they love to come to him. And you know what? Gary's never even been in jail, so it's not because he's proven himself as a good crook, but he just and I was just asking him a minute ago, and he just said, take time to notice everyone, take time to listen to them like they're the only person in the room. Take time to be fascinated with their story. And he says, you can't believe just the expression of your face, how much that impacts people as to whether they want to come close or they want to back off. Again, you all know this. Dictators use fear and force. True leaders use love. Because leadership is all about finding keys. It's important because I thought this was a powerful thing. John Maxwell says, people don't leave jobs, they leave leaders. And 70% of people who leave a job in a survey that was done said, I left because I didn't feel valued by the leader. If you want to have good retention at your business, it's going to come down to that. I love the CEO of Nordstrom said the only difference between stores is how we treat our customers. And I thought, man, what if you thought of church that way? The only difference between churches is how they treat that person when they come in the door. I got a call from a friend, been out of church many years. And she said, I didn't know if I'd ever get back in church, but I'm thriving in this church now. I go 3 times a week to Bible studies. And I said, you got to tell me, what did they do? And he said, well, number one, they remembered my name when I came back the second time. I had 5 people invite me to their life group. And they built their whole church around going to the movies groups for solo adults, going out to Sunday lunch. And he said, I was so lonely and everybody wanted to know me. I said, how's the preaching? Oh, I'm not sure. But I said, okay, yeah, that's it, isn't it? And it's just how you value people. This is what God says matters most. I want to read Matthew 25 from the Message translation. When he finally arrives, Jesus, blazing in beauty, and all his angels with him, the Son of Man will take his place on his glorious throne. Then all the nations will be arranged before him, and he will sort the people out, much as a shepherd sorts out sheep and goats, putting sheep to his right and goats to his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, enter, you are blessed by my Father. Take what's coming to you in this kingdom. It's been ready for you since the world's foundation, and here's why. I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me a drink. I was homeless and you gave me a room. I was shivering and you gave me clothes. I was sick, you stopped to visit. I was in prison and you came to me. Then those sheep are going to say, Master, what are you talking about? When did we ever see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you a drink? And when did we ever see you in prison and come to you? The king will say, I'm telling you the truth. Whenever you did one of these things to someone overlooked or ignored, I'd circle those 2 words. Someone overlooked or ignored. That was me. you did it to me. I think it's so significant that the rewards of the kingdom are interactions with individuals. They're not big ministries, they're simple moments. And I've shared before, one time I'm in my office doing all this sermons prep and all this, and these new people come walking in, and I get a text, so and so would like to meet you, and I said, man, I'm so busy getting ready for the ministry. Welcome. I'm so busy getting ready for the ministry. All of a sudden, the Holy Spirit says, that is the ministry. You just missed the ministry. The ministry was there. And I'll just shout out to Mike. I was so proud watching him Sunday. I think he greeted 75 people. You know, it was just, what a time. So I think that's, if there was one value that will make you an influencer, it's the magic of noticing the one and creating a moment that they do something, you know. And I've been trying to get better at this. I'm trying to take more pictures of people, because I'll tell them, if I get your picture, I'll remember your name and I'll pray for you all week. And it's amazing when I see them next week and say, you know, I just met a lady last week, Farah, and her husband, Zach, and they are RVs. I had to find out 3 things about them. So I'm looking for them Sunday, and I can say, well, how's the Picacho motorhome facility? And how's your tire? Because I heard your tire blew out on the way from Deming. And it's amazing if you can just remember the little things like that. So what does the law of addition look like? It is leading with a focus on encouraging, inspiring, and empowering. I love those 3 words: encouraging, inspiring, and empowering. And they're really 3 different ones. Encouragement, we know pretty well. Inspiring, I love that, because I feel that was what my call in life to do, was to inspire. Inspire is to motivate. It is to energize gifts inside of other people. Empower is to give incredible opportunities, get them somewhere they could never be themselves, introduce them to someone, put them on your Instagram. I don't know, whatever it is, but you're actually giving them a space higher and further than they could ever be. I love the boss who said, the biggest purpose of my job is to see how many of these guys I could get into management. How many of these guys could I get on the top 10 sales list? And that was his reason for going to work. Guess what? He got promoted to CEO, but you can understand why, because of that empowerment thing. I love reading about this lady, Cent Marshall, the first Black woman to be a CEO of a professional sports team. She was the CEO up until this year of the Dallas Mavericks. And in an interview, they found out that the company just loved her so much, and she got interviewed. Well, what was the first thing you did? The organization was a mess. Did you come in and fire everybody? Did you do all of this? And she said, no, it took me 2 months, but I had lunch with every employee, from the workers and the janitor to every person. Well, did you talk about the work? Did you talk about the organization? She said, no, I didn't talk about any of that. All I wanted to know was their hopes, dreams, and their interests, and what mattered to them. Because until I know what matters to people, I can't lead people. I'm not leading people to do a job. I'm leading people to become their best. So she took notes. This is their kids' names. This is their grandkids. And became like the most popular CEO they'd ever had. And I think this is what Jesus modeled for us. I love the quote by St. Augustine: Jesus loved everyone like they were the only one. And that's why he left the 99. Why? Because he wanted everyone to know that they're loved like they're the only one. It means leading people for their benefit. And I love this phrase, seeing in them more than they see in themselves, appreciating them more than they appreciate themselves. Just think about that. That's an incredible statement. I don't know how good I've ever done at that. But boy, is that a bar to think of. I want to believe in you more than you believe in you. And I want to appreciate you more than you appreciate you. Why? Because when we do that, we create what? Encouragement, inspiration, and empowerment. So just some practical examples. Perform small acts of kindness anonymously. That's what Jesus is talking about. I was thirsty. You didn't sound your trumpet. You just made sure I got a good drink. And this is huge for leaders. Walk slowly through the crowd. Take time to notice and learn something about individuals. And I think this is, I don't want to call it magic, but I don't know what else to call it. To literally be somewhere just for the people that are there with no other agenda. And it takes incredible intentionality to do what Jesus did. Isn't it interesting? He almost never arrived anywhere on time. Thank God I can relate to that. But why? Because I got to take a detour because this person just told me his daughter's on the deathbed. This person over here has just been cast out. They're about to stone her. Can you recognize on Jesus' agenda, almost nothing that's written in the Bible was on a daily planner? He doesn't say, today I'm going to go in the middle of a stony. Today there's going to be a mom with a funeral. I'm going to go ahead and take the casket and raise her son back to life. It was walking slow enough to see. Begin your day by reflecting on your love for others and thanking Jesus for them. This is an incredible thing. If you don't leave your home without thinking of everyone that's very important to you, thinking about what you love about them and thanking the Lord, that immediately switches your attitude towards them from seeing them to valuing them. Focus on encouraging more, listening more than you're heard. I should let Gary Brown talk about that. But develop a bias for action. I love that one. You know what that is? That's like, hey, I look down at the end of the store and I see someone trying to get through a door. They're not getting there very well. I'm just going to run over there. You're not going to think about it. Do I have time? You're just going to do it. And a bias for action always sets aside people who think about doing right and people who are just geared. They're ready every day. Observe and find out a person's love language. Paul said, consider others to provoke them to love and good works. Consider how to provoke people. I love that way because we're good at provoking, just not the right way. I can push your button, sister. Yeah, I know you can, but that's not exactly what we want to do. We want to provoke people to be the best person of themselves they could be. So this is stuff I want you to discuss in just a second. But number one, you got to value yourself. I think it's so interesting when Jesus washed feet. It says Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. It was what Jesus knew about himself that allowed him to focus completely on others. It's how well you know yourself in Father's love. If you literally feel adored, if you woke up feeling adored by Jesus today, you can pretty quickly lay aside you. I like to say insecure people naturally drift towards titles, secure people naturally drift towards towels, But insecure people just cannot do this well because they're too focused on What do people think about me? Do people like me? Did what I just say, was that dumb? You know, one time the Lord said, Dale, if you're really going to love extravagantly, some people are going to think you are so weird. And that's the cost for you, because you don't like to be weird, you know? So I'm going to tell the lady at Sonic, wow, you know, you have a great smile. I just love to pray for you. Sometimes that goes well, and sometimes, are you creepy? Whatever you are, you know, it doesn't, you know, it's just going to be risk. And, you know, when you get too excited about something, they're going, how much money do you want? You know, whatever it is, but you're just okay with that. You're just really okay with that. Of course, you recognize people's value to other. You're prepared to have something value to give. I want you to answer this question in just this minute. What do you have very valuable that you can give other people? Some of you have worked really hard at, you're a great listener. Some of you are able to teach. You're able to communicate. That's going to really add value. Others of you are really good cheerleaders. You're able to be a good mentor to someone. Some of you, maybe you could sing well, you could, but what has God gifted you to do? Because if you really want to add value to a lot of people, you got to be valuable. You got to develop valuable tools. You got to be, as we talked about last week, you have to grow to your highest level so you can give to your greatest potential. And learn what they value. And always be aware of this. I thought this was brilliant. If you're a leader, people are asking 3 questions, and they may not trust you for a long time, but at least you know what they're asking. Number 1, do they care? Number 2, can I trust them? And number 3, can they help me? If people look at you and say, wow, that person really cares, you know what? I can trust them. And they have something they could help me with. That's what gives you a powerful impact. Take the time to be aware on your motivation. This is really a value of motivation. And Jesus taught us that that's where leadership starts, is, are you doing this to be noticed by men? Are you praying out loud so people will say, woo, that guy can pray, you know? Are you dressed in the grounds like the Pharisees wore so people will notice, man, that guy looks holy. Man, she must be a prophetess. She's got that prophetess look. Whoa, man, I'm gonna kind of get nervous around that person. I want to, whatever it is, what do you want from ministry? Answer that question. What do you want to get out of this? If you don't know that, you're going to set yourself up for a lot of disappointment. And obviously, we all have to work on that. And what do we want? And I hope we want to add value. We want to glorify Jesus. We want to treat Jesus. We want to see that we're treating Jesus. And when someone smiles, we want to think that I just made Jesus smile. We want that to, I called it in my book, Kissing the Face of God, Worship and Compassion, doing compassionate things as an act of worship to Jesus. I'm not just doing compassionate things, but when I do them, I did this to worship Jesus today. And if nobody else got anything out of it, it was okay. That whole motive is just at the heartbeat of this law. And I love Ruth. I just put her as our biblical example today. And she, incredible. She leaves her home. She leaves her faith. She leaves everything. And she says, where you go, I will go. Where you die, I will die. Isn't that an incredible person? I mean, just unbelievable. And she honors her mother-in-law. And she just simply says, I'm doing this because I want to add value to her. And she could have never imagined that she's going to be the great grandmother of David, and she's going to get the richest man in town, whatever else she got. But in that's the thing. When you come to someone and you say, you know what, where you're going, I'm going just because I think I could add value to you. When you get to that point, I remember a pastor I worked under, just as a volunteer type thing. And I just sat down one day, and this is when I'm about 20, and I just asked him this question. Let me make a list of questions to find out what could I do to help my pastor. And I thought of all my gifts, my values. And finally I thought, what if I asked him if he had a sermon, if he'd like me to research, even if it means finding a good joke for him or finding and he gets all the credit and I don't need him to ever quote me. And when I told him that, his eyes lit up. And so every week I just studied the topic of the sermon I gave, and he quoted me and never gave me any credit. But what did that mean? That meant someday I knew that ended up being my fast track, and God raised me up to speak. And I learned more about speaking coming up with research for someone else than I did working on myself. And then just a prophetic gift. And this is something Sue talks about. The prophetic is what I call encouragement on steroids, because it's now asking Holy Spirit for a word for people. That takes it to a whole new level. And it's what Jesus did over and over. Hey, you're Simon. No, you're Peter. I see a word for you. Nathaniel, you know what? I saw you. You were sitting under a tree, and God told me, you're a man of integrity. I just think we so underuse the prophetic, because if we got a prophetic word, I've found people really want to hear that. When I tell someone, when I was praying for you this week, these are 3 things the Lord showed me. They're like, yeah, whoa, oh, that is incredibly inspiring and empowering. So if you were to identify something in your life, and this is where we get to ask ourselves the hard question, what most gets in the way for you from adding value to people? Here's a list, and you can add your own. What gets you off the track of what's in it for me? What gets you stuck in the harvest you're trying to get more than the seeds you're called to sow? What gets you stuck in the wrong mindset? And then what is one thing you could do to change that mindset, to reverse that into empowerment? So for example, impatience or busyness. I'm always in a hurry. Well, you're probably not stopping very often if you're always busy. I tend to be critical of people. I tend to believe in their faults before I believe in their potential. I get frustrated easy. I have a negativity towards myself that makes it so hard to forget about how people are thinking about me. Laziness, I won't go there. Pride, suspicious, lack of belief, resentment. Do I have logs in my eye that make me look negative at people? Do I like attention too much? Do I have the secret thought, look at me, rather than look at you, look at you? Can I switch that thought? What is one thing you could do? What is one tendency you could replace today that would make you more of an empowering leader? So go ahead and let's discuss that for just a minute here, okay? So let's just real quick summarize the law of solid ground, law number 6. Trust is the foundation of leadership, is what that law says. Trust is an important thing. Trust is the most important thing for a leader. It is the glue that holds everything together. You cannot break trust with people and have influence with people. And so there's not anything more important to talk about. And I felt a lot about this. Why do I trust some people and I don't? And you know what? I rarely say to myself, I don't trust that person. But I automatically have a trust level in my head. I don't know why. And it goes up or it goes down. And and especially for a leader, it becomes the most important self-reflection that you can have. I described it in here as trust is people uh, is putting quarters in people's jar, or them putting quarters in your jar to take care of. What you do with those quarters is really important. For one thing, if I put a quarter in someone's jar and says, "Hey, I promise I will call you tomorrow at 5 o'clock." If I don't call them, they're not going to throw me away. What they're going to do is say, "Oh, you just lost a nickel, brother." Now they're not going to say that, but unconsciously they'll take some money out of the jar because of what just happened. And what I have found is mistrust rarely, I mean, it can happen as something blowing up. Obviously, sometimes something does, people do something, they steal or whatever. But most often, trust is broken very slowly. Uh, and it's gained even slower, is what I would like to say. Um, as I said, 3 questions everyone's asking if you're leading. Uh, can they help me? Are you competent? Do they care? And do I trust them? What I found is some people are very slow to trust. It's okay. You know what? Those people end up, if you ever get their trust, they trust you more and they're faithful than the people who say, "Hey, I trust you. Let's go." You know? So don't be discouraged when you can tell. Don't trust. I mean, I literally now can look at people in the congregation and I'm talking. I say, "That guy doesn't trust me at all." She trusts me about 70%. Wow, pretty good. I'm getting better, you know. But that also tells me I can only lead them as far as they trust me. So before I try to get them to follow me, there's so many people I say, I gotta put a lot more quarters in that jar because they'll give me lip service, you know, but they're not going to be a Sue Yeager who'll die for me. You know what I'm saying? There's going to have to be a whole lot of sowing some quarters into that. And that as much doesn't trust doesn't come from being perfect because nobody would trust anybody, right? But trust does come from being authentic. John Maxwell says people will tolerate honest mistakes, but if you violate their trust, you'll find it very difficult to ever regain their confidence. Meaning, yeah, if you fail, oh my gosh, I was supposed to call you today and I didn't. I'm so sorry. They're going to be okay. That's fine. You know, if you just blow it off, like I say, you can get that quarterback pretty quick. But if you just do that 10 times and never say anything, you're out of quarters. It's also interesting. It's a marriage verse too, but how quick you can resolve a conflict depends on how many quarters there are. Yeah. If there's a lot of grace you're depositing, there's a lot of grace you're getting. So again, competency, character, and consistency. So Joseph is this incredible. I mean, he started off his ministry with such little trust. His brothers, he was cocky, they didn't trust him. But look what happened in 13 years. Reading from Genesis 41, it says, then the plan seemed good to Pharaoh and all his officials. So Pharaoh asked them, can we find anyone like this man, one in whom the Spirit of God is? And Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has made all this known to you, there's no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Wow. Now that is someone who earned trust. But if you go back and read his story, what's amazing is he makes integrity decisions, you know, and he won't compromise with Potiphar's wife. He takes such responsibility in every assignment he has. every time it says the leader who gave him a responsibility never even bothered to check on him again, because they knew he would do it better than they even expected. So whether he was in the prison, whether he was in Potiphar's house. So by the time he got there, he had such a reputation. And trust and reputation go together. And it takes a long time to get a reputation, but it really is amazing. I mean, when you earn enough trust with people, honestly, and again, this is not a boast at all. It scares me how much people trust me. It's like, but I also know it took a long time for them to share anything with me, to do. You can sometimes tell trust by something. Do they give in the offering? It's just everything is affected by trust in your life. Here's some keys, and I just wanted to really highlight this one. Trust, and I put the word respect because the two go together. Respect is earned on difficult ground. Trust is earned on difficult ground. This is huge. When do you trust someone? It's when there's a really big test. It's just huge. If Chris wanted to date my daughter, so my only question is, all right, how am I going to trust you? What time is she going to be home? This is going to be everything, and I just try to teach the teenagers that, especially the guys, their father will kill you. But anyhow, but trust is earned when there's a temptation. Trust is earned when emotionally you're upset. Trust is earned when you need to bite your tongue. Trust is earned when you have to do something unpopular. And I think this is probably for me the hardest one, because I've told you before, I'm a recovering people pleaser. What I wanted to point out is that people respecting you and people liking you is not always the same thing. And this is really hard, especially in a culture that gets defined by how many likes you have and how many, little Facebook and hearts and whatever else. In our culture today, leadership is thought in terms of how many people like you. That's what an influencer often is thought of. And now all the kids want to be influencers. And I say, well, it's okay if people like you, but that's not leadership. It's when people really dislike what you just did, but they respect you because what you did was according to your values. That's being a leader. And so what I found out is, for example, Paul in Galatians chapter 2, how did he earn respect? Man, this was pretty heavy. Peter isn't sitting with the Gentiles. He's sitting with the Jews. He starts to treat the Gentiles he begins to become prejudiced. And Peter and Paul, in front of everybody, corrects him. I mean, no, that's tough ground to say, no, I know everybody likes Peter. What you're doing isn't right. I'm gonna really make everybody uncomfortable right now. And I'm gonna call out the elephant in the room. And leaders have to call out elephants. Otherwise, little elephants become great big stinky ones and ruin the whole organization. That's how you earn trust, though, right? And then trust comes from being authentic, not perfect. I already mentioned that. It's not being perfect. It's owning how you mess up and being incredibly responsible, going the extra mile and saying, please, if I did something here, you come to me and my reaction is preset here. I'm going to say, oh, really? I'm not going to say, no, I didn't. I'm going to say, tell me more. Tell me more. Why? Because that's how you earn trust. When people know that person's authentic, and if you point out something that's not right, they're going to own it. Even if they have a reason, they're not super sensitive and they're not reactive. Trust is built on the deep inner work you do. You build trust one day at a time by putting your life on the rock, by disciplined growth, following the word, and building character as we learned last week. Growing trust comes from the fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord is something we need to know more about. It's an awesome reverence, as we say. It's knowing, especially the moment I become a leader. I can mess up my life. We always say we're one step away from stupid. But man, when you become a leader, your choices can hurt so many people. I think about it all the time. And one time I wrote a list of something like 50 things in my own life. Dale, if you had a moral failure, here's 50 things that would happen. All the way down to your grandkids, to all the people who stop going to church now, to, and you just, what does that do? That makes you shiver in your boots. I just tell people, if you want to get up there and talk and you don't shiver in your boots sometime, you're not ready. You're not ready, because a teacher will be held to higher accountability. You will be judged by every word. And you've got to have that incredible reverence for that position. And what does that do? That translates into hard choices you make. It means you prepare more so that you don't walk off cliffs. It means that you have more accountability in your life, on and on and on. And when you do that, you begin to build up the trust that people see when they look at you. So just finished time. Here were some questions. What elements of being trustworthy really stand out to you? What is an example of someone who's earned your trust? What stands out in how people earn your trust? I love to ask, how much trust have you earned from your kids, from your boss, how much trust? And then what are some things you really need to let God work in your life to grow your trustworthiness? I'm going to embrace difficult ground. I'm not going to see it as something to run away from. I'm going to say, here's a great opportunity. I've just been gossiped about. Woo! Hallelujah. Man, there's someone going to watch me respond to that. And if they see me respond with graciousness, they're going to not say anything, but they're going to trust, and they're probably going to talk to me more openly next time. Willing to be slow to commit, not driving by people. One of my weaknesses is I want to say yes to everything. That actually is the way you lose trust. Yeah, I'll be there. Wait a second. I don't know if I could get there, but I was too quick. And then I wasn't able to keep the commitment that I wanted to. And then before you know it, that just set me back, and I lost at least 65 cents in their jar, whatever. Being a person who knows how to show up. I just always that. I've just sat and reflected in my mind a whole lot. And I just tried, I won't tell you who's on the list, but who do I trust the most in this church? And then I asked why. And in every case, one of the things was they show up. That was just it. They show up, the good day, the bad day, they just show up. I know they're going to show up. I'm not wondering about that. Getting rid of any form of deceitfulness, talking the talk, walking the walk, being a person who puts boundaries, to be careful. And leaders have to be so careful because we have gifts that can manipulate people. We can be charming and smooth talking. And what does that do? That makes it very easy to say what people want to hear than to say what people should hear. And I have to repent a lot to say, yeah, you could charm them or you could serve them, but you can't do both. So how do I say that thing that's really integrity here? And not just to try to get people to like me. And then how do I take full ownership of my mistakes? So I know that's a little convicting, but maybe if there's anything you can get out of that, you can discuss it, and then we'll finish up today. Thank you all.